Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppers with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
So welcome everybody to the Human Conversation. And I have a really fantastic guy with me who, it's actually quite a special episode this, if I'm honest. It's quite close in terms of his auntie is one of my best friends. And that's how we met. So this is Luke Ollett.
Nailed it.
Did
Hello,
I nail
everybody.
it?
You got it first time.
Do you know, I get really freaked out with names sometimes because I think I'm not going to say it properly, but there you go. Nailed it. Super. So Luke, welcome to the Human Conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
It's lovely to talk to you. And I'm really super excited about this conversation that we're going to have. And I know that the listeners will be detecting an American accent here. So just tell us, right, first of all, where are you right now?
So I am in Streatham, London. I was born in Burbank, California, and I have two British parents. My mom being my sister, your friend. She was born here in England. My dad born here in Ruislip, England. But that's where and I grew up there. So when I was young, I spent a lot of time in England, but I got educated from the age of 5 and up, really in the States.
Yeah.
And that's where the accent comes from.
And so how long have you been back in the UK?
I am at the end of 3 months, this recent stint. I went back and forth to California since the beginning of the year twice during these COVID times. 2 passports makes that easier, I suppose. Yeah. And really in the effort for chasing love and life. I had met somebody at the end of December. She is from here. And we had planned to try things out, I suppose, at the end of this year. But because of COVID, I thought, well, let's just go sooner because all my other plans have been canceled.
I love that. And it's working out, I hear.
It really is. It really is. I mean, it's our first month in this apartment here. And as I look at the plants and some of the pictures and the fruit bowl, you just feel like, oh, this is actually real. It's not just an Airbnb.
It's so lovely. So look, I want to kind of dig deep into a story that's very personal to you. And you've produced something so wonderful out of the back of this story that when we first chatted, I said, we need to make a podcast. Because for me, this is the story is so important in this. It's hugely important. So let's just say that the story really focuses around your mum. And let me first say to you, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what we're talking about here, Luke?
Yeah, so my mom, who is named Zoe, she passed away in 2001. And at that time, I was 18 years old, and I'm now 36 years old. So at the time, her passing came and went. It came really quickly and passed really quickly. And I didn't think much about it. And in a few years later, I noticed a picture at my dad's house, and it was. My mom was an artist, and she drew some amazing artworks, and they've been around my life, my whole life. And it was a shame to see this picture leaning on the wall without a frame, and it had a bowed shape, and you could see smoke stains on it because both my mom and dad smoked a lot of cigarettes and coffee stains. And so it occurred to me, I thought, if there's anything I could do right now, it would be to help her art. As I say that out loud, I realize that's kind of a lie, because I think before the artwork came, there was a moment of realization that I just never really dealt with my mom and her death. Nothing to do with her art. It just had to do with me being older, me being a little more pensive, and realizing that I didn't quite finish or at least put a button on our relationship, because at the time she passed when I was in college. And there was also, when she passed away, the week before I saw her, and I went to their house as a usual college student might to collect food and eat all the food and get clothes and maybe steal some of my dad's weed if it was in the drawer or something. And my mom came out, and she was in a walker, and she's always had trouble. She had lupus her whole life, and so she's had a lot of health issues. And she comes out in a walker, and she's like, Luke, before you leave, what do you think of my walker? And I could just remember looking at her and kind of looking back, and I told her it looks pathetic. And then I went out and I left, and I got on the bike and wheelied away, at least in my head, or how I write it in the book. And then she died a week later, and we hadn't spoken since that time. So of course my head falls like, oh shit, what did I do that? Is that something that she got just so offended by her son saying this to her that she just thought, what's the point? Like, I'm just battling this disease and he just thinks this stuff. And so it was pretty tough. And I remember at the time as an 18-year-old, I think I just hid I was playing on the school soccer team. I hid in my fraternity. I hid in booze and drugs and usual things they think 18, 19, 20-year-olds do, and never really thought much of it. So fast forward 10-ish years later, I wanted to do something about that. I'd been doing a lot of writing. So I wanted to, I wrote her a letter, and I wrote it as a blog. It's a blog that still makes Roz, I think, when she reads it. I think it makes her tear up a bit. And it's just a letter to her to say, there's so much I would like to tell you. And so it's kind of my way of telling Zoe, my mom, those things. And
Luke, do you think, because I always say that writing a letter is actually so therapeutic, whether it's because you're writing it to somebody who you've lost and they're no longer here, or even like relationship wise, sometimes, if you can't say something, to actually put it into writing, there's something quite special about doing that, isn't there? And I loved it when you told me you'd written this letter. It felt very special.
I think the magic of a letter is, especially a blog that I know I'm going to post to people, is that I wrote that letter for her. And maybe I posted it in a public statement because it was an announcement of, man, I was a shitty kid, but I'm better now. And I don't know how to better say that, but also when you really direct it to somebody, I think a letter can be so nice. And I mean, I probably could have written that and burned it and then told this story, and it could still have as much significance. And it would be a little easier, because even now, as I choke up slightly, I wouldn't have to read it in its form. And I know Roz told me at some point she reread it, I think, because I sent her a link to the book and some of the letters. And because I write a form of the letter in the book, but not copy and pasted.
Yeah.
But the letter was pivotal in the creation of the book, because I went to a show that's called Taboo Tales, and people get on stage, and this is in Los Angeles. You get on stage, and it's a small theater, maybe 100 people less, and somebody gets on stage and tells a really funny story of a taboo. And I think I just can't get enough of people being open and honest, and a taboo is that's all the things, because if you're willing to share your taboo, you're admitting something that I guess you think is bad, or other people think is bad, and it's a vulnerability that you're willing to share.
So just tell us, in case, maybe this is a language thing, but taboo, is this an American phrase, or is this just something I haven't necessarily heard of? I know there's a board game, I think, called Taboo. What does it really mean, Luke?
Yeah, taboo is that which must not be done or spoken about, or thought about even. So you have sexual taboos, and you have all these things that really are kind of that's off limits. It's just off limits, and you're not really supposed to deal with it, because that's just and you can have societal taboos, you can have your marital taboos, you can have taboos and all sorts of things, but it's sort of a word to hide behind, because people don't want to deal with what the actual subject matter is.
Yeah.
So when I was at that show, I thought about what I wanted to be on that stage. What would I talk about? And at that point, I had started to think about the art, and I was trying to not to sell them, but I was scanning them. So I'd find my mom's art and take them to a printer or a scanner, and then make at least a digital copy of them. And then I thought, oh, well, this stuff's amazing. Let me just sell it. And so I'd make a big copy of some of this amazing artwork. And I was kind of struggling with that because, well, I didn't know why. So when I went to taboo, I thought, well, my taboo is that I'm trying to make money off my dead mother's talent. And to sum it up in a sentence, I suppose. So when I submitted my application to Taboo Tales, and I used that letter as my submission. And then I added a little bit, and here I am, Mom, now to make money off your work, so wish me luck, or something to that form. And they got back to me and they said, this is great. In fact, I think the girl said that she had a mom who died in a similar way, and it really hit her hard, but a letter format is just not good for the stage. So I got the response, and I was just irate. I was like, how dare you tell me it's not a good format to talk on stage? This is good. This is real good. Screw you. I'm going to show you Taboo Tales. So I said, I'm going to scan all the pictures. I'm going to try and sell all the prints, and set up an Etsy page and get a website and try and sell this artwork. And I immediately had no success selling the art. And I was reminded by somebody that art is really appreciated with the beholder, and a beholder of the art. If you own the art, what is their story to the art? What is their story? Why do they like it? Sometimes there's a story where it's as simple as, this is visually pleasing, of course. But if you look at the art and it happens to be of a lion, and you're a Leo, and you hold on to your zodiac sign a lot, maybe that's a big thing, or whatever the story might be. So I thought, well, how can I need to tell the story of these pictures, because there's got to be more to them. So I thought I'd do a book, because a book, I could show off the pictures in really high quality, and they do come out really good in a big book. So like, this is a 12-inch square book.
Okay, so some of you guys are on video, which means that you really should just go to YouTube and watch the video. But Luke's just holding up a picture for us to see some of that art. And also, just hold up the front of the book as well, Luke, so we can actually see. To describe this, it's called Finding Zoë, and then the subline is through her art. This book is really quite a big size, isn't it, Luke?
Yeah, it's 12-inch square, 44 pages, coffee table book was my thought, because I didn't have faith in humans to be able to read something, or at least read my story, because it can't be that good. So I thought short, concise, and image focus was the goal of the book.
And it needed to be that, because the art is absolutely stunning in it. I mean, truly stunning. And so I kind of just wanted you to get a feel for what the book sort of looks like, and imagine, if you're listening to this, what that book actually looks like. Luke, carry on telling us then. So you formulated this idea to create the book, but because then it can tell the story of the art, which is the bit I love.
Yeah, so I could, in a single product, I could sell for a profitable amount of money and show off her art. And that seemed to me, at least at the time, to be worth exploring. So as a part of that process, initially, the story wasn't really there. I didn't have the stories, nor did I really anticipate to wrap the words around the pictures. But as I made news, sent the smoke signals up in the world to say, hey, if you have one of my mom's pictures, I'd love to meet you and hear about how you got the art and your relationship with her and your story about her. And then the stories came. So the 44 pages are really each picture, or most of the pictures are a name. So each chapter is a name, and they are usually the one who owns or had the picture. And then the story, which ranges from a single paragraph to a few pages, is about that person. So although the art is the focus and really displayed prominently in the book, the words are really those chapter names. And I would like to take this moment just to say that all those names in the book, thank you so much, because the book doesn't exist without you.
No, and I love this in that, we're now on a journey in that book. So we're not just seeing your mum's wonderful artwork. We're now finding out the people that knew your mum and the relationships that they had with your mum, and then almost the story behind each picture because of that. I mean, there's so much depth to this, Luke. You see how excited I feel about it. It goes deeper and deeper. It's like an onion, all these lovely layers. I mean,
yeah.
how did you feel being able, I mean, I kind of want to assume, which you should never do, that you just were forming this amazing connection back to your mum.
It didn't happen at all really during the process of gathering the pictures or the stories. That probably formed more during the writing of the book. This process has taken better part of 3 years to travel around, collect the images, traveling mostly the States and then some parts of England to get it. But it didn't occur to me so much, because what would happen is I would meet these people and it would seem very objective and matter of fact. And then I would take notes after, and I couldn't help, it just seemed, I don't know, I guess as I say that out loud, that's a little unfair, because I knew what I was doing towards the end, some of the later trips. One of the harder chapters for me to write was the Cindy chapter, which is early on. And the Cindy chapter, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know I was writing a book at that point. I just knew she had some beautiful pictures and she had offered to loan them to me. And then as I went back to write them, I couldn't help but try and force the narrative onto my experience with her, and then ultimately the Jack chapter, which was her ex-husband that she led me to. And I think I struggled with those chapters because I couldn't validate it with them. And most of these chapters aren't validated with the person. It's because I never explicitly asked them, is this what happened? It was a lot of it was interpretation. And I've reached out to everybody in the book to make sure I'm not being outrageous. And there actually were a few corrections based on that from first drafts. But I never put it together that I was really getting close with my mom until the actual writing, until the connection of the words and really focusing on the storyline and the progression. Then I realized there's a lot of themes. For example, I tended to bring people back to their time with her, and then I couldn't help but feel I was intruding on their memory of her. And I say intruding in a not negative way, but I was there voyeuristically watching.
Yeah.
And I presume most of these people didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her in the same way I didn't. And when I would show up many years, often decades later, they didn't really know how to dig this memory up and deal with it. So when I showed up, I was there scraping at the bottom of the barrel, that something that you probably didn't want to do. So it was a bit raw, and I felt I wasn't there sometimes. It was more them sort of wistfully thinking about Zoe. And I had to try hard in the book not to sort of stamp on that theme, because it did come up a lot, and I didn't want to just say over and over and over again that kept happening, but it indeed did.
Do you think that's got something to do with the sort of woman your mum was and the relationships they all had with her?
No doubt in my mind, my mom was an intense individual, and everybody she dealt with, it was maximum velocity, intensity, duration. And that's, I think, what people loved about it. Lynn is her best friend, and Lynn's not in the book. In fact, I only mention her, I think, very briefly, if at all. And she tells me some amazing stories about her relationship with my mom. And she says she's never fought with anybody else more than Zoë. And it's one of those things, again, where only when you tear and scratch and rip back and you get to the inner side of people, you can really get to know them or feel them. And to the point where the way Lynn describes it is they would have a fight, and then they'd have somebody come in and be like, okay, you two need to calm down. And Lynn would be like, okay, fine. And Zoë would just be like, no, I'm going to rip off another layer and let's go even further. And I get the sense that she was like that with everybody. And that is a characteristic I've learned from this process, this book, that I share with her. So even at 18, I probably definitely didn't think that. But now I know I'm a bit of Zoë in that sense, because I presume anybody listening to this who knows me can know I can kind of get under your nails and prod and pick at things about people, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But at the end, I feel people have really strong relationships because of that. And to be honest, it's kind of disappointing that people kind of stop at the surface when they deal with people in relationships, whether it be professional, social, family. It could be better. And a lot of people just stop when it gets tough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes we're a bit scared to go that bit deeper, aren't we, sometimes? And even as you talk about it, in business, I always speak to my clients about stepping into their world, because I think we just dip our toe, don't we? And we just, I'll just see what it's like there. Oh, okay, it's different. All right. And then we don't really connect in a way that we could connect. So sometimes that deeper, painful stuff is actually an amazing way for us to connect better with each other. That's what I think anyway. I think what fascinated, I've been so lucky because I got to look through the book with Roz. And of course I didn't know your mum. I know Roz very well. And I didn't know you at the time when I looked at the book. I hadn't met you because we only met the other day on Zoom, just like this. And yet I think when I did meet you, having looked at the book, I don't know what it was. I sort of felt like I'd known you forever. It was such a lovely connection because I was moved by the book. And I think that's important to say in this podcast. That's why I wanted to do this, because I wanted to tell you how the book made me feel. This is somebody I don't know, you I didn't know, but this beautiful art, and I mean stunningly beautiful art and very deep art, had stories to it, even if you'd not written a word with it. But the fact you did then add that other depth to it made it such a fascinating book. I want to keep going back to it. I want to read it again. And I want to even ask you more about the book. Once I have done that, Luke, I will want another conversation with you. And I say, so tell me more about this. And what did that mean? Because when you look at the pictures, actually, a lot of them I find incredibly sad. I feel like there's sadness in a lot of those pictures. Did you feel like that?
Well, the sadness is, and I start the book saying that there is always an undertone of some sort of darkness to so many of her pictures, even whether it be an eagle with an intense glare or even a lion that just kind of has a little bit of maybe I wouldn't stroke him kind of look to him. And there's no doubt. My mom lived, she lived a painful life. As I understand, lupus is absolutely horrible to have. And it's a painful disease. Your body's killing itself. And especially back then, sort of in the late 90s, 80s, people just didn't know. The doctors didn't know. So you were given all sorts of medication for one thing, and then another medication for another thing. You had to deal with this. And I think there's no doubt that that's going to affect you. And how else do you it's tough to communicate sadness and just be constantly doing a sad face. I think it's interesting how she does sort of use the imagery to convey that when you couldn't really put your finger on it so much. Yeah. So there's no doubt there's a bit of sadness. I mean, in the book, I deal with her. I go meet her ex-husband before my dad. So she dealt with divorce. I talk about abortion, which I've had Facebook comments that lead to her relationship with her mother and never being validated, and things that probably a lot of people deal with or have in their life, but for her, it comes out in her art. And yeah.
So sitting here now, do you think you know your mum better because of actually producing the book?
I feel I relate to her more. I feel she could sit next to me now and we'd be a lot more comfortable around each other. Not that we weren't comfortable before, but we would understand each other more. And it's a shame that I was still a kid when she passed and she didn't get to know adult Luke. But I think we would know each other a lot more. And I think I appreciate her more than a mother is what I got out of this book, because I'd only seen her as my mom. I used to call her Mummy, but then the kids would make fun of me. So I'd switch to Mom because my grandmother was Mum. My mom was Mummy. And then to talk to people that saw her partying, traveling, doing things that you probably don't want your parents to know. You realize these are the stories I wish everybody I could swap with her, that if she was sitting next to me and we do understand each other so well that I could candidly ask, she could get under my nails and I wouldn't have a problem with it. And so to that end, yes, definitely learned a lot about her. But I do end it with there is a lot more. And I do think there's a second book out of this because she has a lot more pictures. I've already found a few, but I've also been led to others, or people have reached out to me they've reached out to me in response to the book and saying, oh, well, you thought this, but you're totally wrong. So I got all sorts of corrections eventually I need to make in this. And others that I just have a lead and I just need to go find them. And as a Luke personal thing, I love a lead. For example, somebody said one of the last pictures she did was she gave to somebody at her memorial. One of those moments you wish you could take back, maybe, where at her memorial, my dad decided it was easier to move on quicker. Same thing probably with me. We both treated it the same. So anything related to Zoe got given away, from our African gray parrot to a lot of pictures. So somebody got given it. He was in a bad space in his life and gave it to somebody else. So this amazing, huge, beautiful picture of a girl over the ocean and is to be found. It exists. I have a picture of it, but I don't have the actual, because it was given to a guy who, as far as we know, he probably sold it on the street to get some money for some drugs or something.
Wow.
So it's out there and hopefully it's not destroyed, but that kind of lead is what I like. I don't mind a sleuthing expedition. And this book is that, effectively, from being given an email address or just, I heard about so-and-so up here, and then I dig in and these chapters came out of it.
That. I love that we've now got a search on for this amazing picture as well, Luke. You know, we can make something of this, I think, you know.
It's so true.
I think the other interesting thing that you talked about to me was these beautiful fairies, were they, that she had drawn, which were almost childlike, you know, for a beautiful child's book even. Do you remember you mentioning those?
Yeah, I do. I think, do I have any right here? I don't. I could find them, but those aren't in the book, but they were, that one's interesting because one, they were on the stairs in my grandparents' house that I would visit all the time. And so I saw those fairies so often, and but they were framed very poorly, and so their paper was decaying. So by me scanning them, they now exist in this sort of purified form to the point where they're actually better than the originals. So I got to keep the originals in this sort of special paper and hidden away from air and light, and but also they are very childlike. And she went through phases of art. So she definitely, and this was during her pointillism phase. So she did so much in pointillism, where like little Van Gogh and a few others where just dots, and the fairies are done in dot form.
That's amazing, because they look beautiful. They really are lovely, aren't they, to see?
Yeah,
That
one gets back to me trying to make money off her, because I do think the fairies they come in there's 4 different ones, 4 different colors, and I've tended to give them to people who have a kid or about to have a kid, as you say, childlike. So it's a nice package to give, and you can sort of put them you could imagine separate on your wall, and yeah, I hope maybe other people would appreciate that. I think is the idea.
I think they're beautiful, and they're quite different to the other art, aren't they? That's what I noticed. Such a difference. You know, there's almost some really lovely innocence and joy to the fairy pictures, aren't they? You know, in comparison.
Yeah, I'd love to know where she got the inspiration from, because they're a little sort of Peter Pan-ish, but they're all different in their own right, and if she made it up. But when I was at my mom's ex-husband, his name's Jeff. He's one of the chapters. This is one of the doozy chapters that I haven't gotten to yet in my promotion of this book. But he pulled out a big box, probably a meter square, this huge box that he kept under his bed, and in it was filled with a bunch of cards, and each card was just a handmade birthday card, Happy New Year's card, Christmas card, nothing card other than just say I love you card. And it was done in a similar fashion as these fairies. And it makes me think that she could do these really quickly. And I just love how she would use these sort of fairy-like wisps of air and wings. Yeah. And yeah, there is also a product that came out of this book from seeing Jeff, is that to go get all these cards and see if people would be interested in them.
Yeah, which I think is a great idea. I really do. You know, it's just another element and another way for you to share your mum's art. And I want to say to you, because you say to me several times, I'm just making money off my mum's art, you know. I feel like you're not doing that. I feel like you're sharing your mum's art. And there's a value to that, Luke. So
yeah.
I just want to say that to you, because I don't like you perhaps feeling that way, because it feels like that might be slightly uncomfortable, and I don't think it needs to be. I think you've done an amazing thing to have a legacy to your mum that you're now sharing with the world. That's how you need to think of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do need that slap in the face reminder, and I've had a few people along the way who have been good about that. This wonderful friend I made recently, her name's Jody, is constantly reminding me of that, and I get hung up on the money side of things, and that's it's unfortunate. And I think as you and I talked about, sell the story to sell the book to then sell the art, and so there is a selling aspect to those 3 things, but ultimately, I think the ultimate validation for me would be that everybody knew about Zoe. I suppose.
Exactly.
For good or ill,
Yeah.
it'd be nice. And the art is just nice to use that vehicle.
Absolutely. And the book is called Finding Zoë.
Yeah.
Which is just perfect, isn't it, for this? So you're right. This is about us being able to spread the story of the book. And hopefully everybody's going to want to have that book now. I'm going to have it. I want it. And I hope people are going to follow and watch out for the whole way that they can buy that book. We'll put all links in that we've got to help them, won't we, Luke?
Yeah.
And then after that, there could be an opportunity to even buy individual pieces of that art from you.
Yeah. I'm a perpetual one. I'm one who perpetually gets to the end of a project, and then I can create a new finish line. And it's a problem and a blessing, because obviously you aspire for new horizons, but I need to stay focused on that. There is an element to this whole story. It does become emotional. There's a lot of unsaid and performed emotions, I think, having to do with it. But there is an element of execution on selling a book. So even though I'm not about making the money, I do have 900 of them in a garage somewhere that I need to get rid of.
Yes. So are you listening, these 900 listeners that we have? One each for them.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I think it's been really lovely being able to tell your story and listen to your story, so that we really understand how deep this is. This isn't just a book, I don't think. This is a lot more. This is a legacy for your mum. And this is you being able to share your mum's wonderful talent, her artistic talent. Amazing. I love it so much, Luke. I think we are all going to be waiting to A, buy this book, B, buy the second book, and maybe C, even buy some of the art after all of this. That's what I believe people will truly want. It's about value, not price, you know. It's about value.
Yeah, to get back to the purpose of the book was to create a story. So this has been lovely to say some of the stories, and I can't help but picture some of the pictures in the book, and I can't. The story is coming out. It's being told in the same way of peeling back those layers of skin and getting under people's nails. Like, this is what I needed, and hopefully everybody can appreciate that.
That's amazing, Luke. I've loved this. I hope you have too. And I hope our listeners have loved it too. So thank you for joining me for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Jules.
And so listeners, you're going to get all of the links you need in the narrative with this podcast, whichever platform you listen to on. And please like and subscribe to this podcast and tell everyone about this episode so that they can hear the story too and experience the book. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Stitcher, and this will also be on YouTube. So make sure you tune into YouTube to see the book and also Luke's lovely face. And then we will see you all again for the next episode of The Human Conversation. Thanks for listening. Ta-ta for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website, www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.